Okay, so I'm processing things and I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, well, I was gonna make a video on something else, but I asked myself, I said, what do I need to make a video on? And then I was like, oh, you know what? Flaws. So, again, things I did wrong. I remember I failed kindergarten. I remember both years of kindergarten. Just, I don't remember like vast periods. I just remember snippets of me acting out, not being able to sit still, being yelled at, putting the dunce hat on, sitting in a corner, being punished. You know what I mean? That's what I remember from those early school years. Was just like I couldn't sit still. I could not do what these kids were doing, just sitting there. I couldn't do it. Again, and this goes back to the story that my mom had always told me. At 3 years old, they couldn't find me. We went on a trip to DC with my aunt and my cousins. Little, we were young, and they couldn't find me. And I was hanging off the edge of the cliff of the Washington Monument, the wall. I mean, what was I doing? There's just so much that just is so strange. And strange to me as an adult now that none of this shit got questioned. It was all just like, I mean, how ignorant are people? How fucking. It just is a testament to what I'm trying to say, that people, even back then, were so involved with themselves and their bread and circuses and just nonsensical bullshit that even then, we didn't even have cell phones then. We didn't even have that distraction. Still nobody wanted to take the time and address any of this shit. So things I did wrong. So just, I remember always having my own thought. I excelled in English, like reading. I started reading, like my mom said, I started reading at an extremely young age. I've read thousands of books. I was able to, another thing I was able to retain, like, I remember being able to retain so much of what I read up into a certain age, a young age though, like teenager age. And then everything I've read since, it's like I've retained such a tiny bit. It's like I didn't even read it. But I always continued to read because I was like, man, this information has to be going somewhere. At some point in my life, I'm going to be able to access this, I would imagine. So, I don't know, I've been wanting to say that. So, where were we? Reading. Why was I talking about reading? Oh, my faults. That's why we were talking about reading. So, like, English, I love it. Grammar, great grammar. Reading comprehension, where they would ask you to say what you think the story meant or whatever. And I was so horrible at that. And then I got to a point by like 9th grade, 10th grade, whatever it was. And I was just like, and I knew what I thought it would be. And then but I would know I'd have a good idea of what the book wanted me to say that the answer was. It was weird, man. So just again, how my brain worked, like I have no problem. I'm very intelligent. I can read, I can comprehend, but what I take out of things, my point of view is so radically different than most people's. I come from such a different perspective, that I couldn't even I had a hard time passing reading comprehension because obviously other people think what shit means is different than what I see it means. So making a note of that. Again, this is coming up as bad things about me because this is what I was told, thinking different was bad. Thinking my own thoughts were bad. So I helped my brother run away at 12. He was 9 or 10, 9, I think. And then at 14, I ran away. And then right after that time is when I was sleeping pilled my mom for a couple weeks so I could go out and see that girl at night for an hour or two, and then going back home until I got caught doing that. Moved in with my aunt. Let's see. I mean, I was drinking. I was drinking all the time. I was fighting. The car accident with my cousin. I almost killed my cousin and his best friend. Mistreating my cousin, my girl cousin, called her a bitch and threw her in a closet. And again, I just want to touch on that again. I mean, this is crazy, dude. Like, that's been held over my head. I mean, I even wrote letters and everything, I mean, there was so much apology for all this shit. And just the guilt and shame, and like, you're never enough. You have so many lessons to learn. To have billionaire family members, and just like constantly in like that $600 I owe, just constantly like, it's not said, If I were to talk to them, they'd be like, Richard, we haven't said anything about that. Richard, we don't care about, you know what I mean? It's that kind of game. So it's just so strange, man. So freaking strange. Oh, the mind control. It's literal mind control. It's very fucked up, man. For a human to do that to another human, like, that's so inhumane, So, and then it was just drinking, fighting. I mean, I bullied my brother. Let's start with all that. I bullied my brother. I wasn't a bully, I don't think, really. Otherwise, I was like, see, and that's why the bullying of my brother never made sense to me. I had so much meanness. Like, remember seeing my mom do those things, like, in secret, and like seeing her hurt herself and cause a situation. And it was, when you would hear it, you would think one thing, but when you would see it, it was complete opposite. And so it's just like all that dissonance, man. And then, so I wasn't a bully. I mean, I was such a strong, outgoing, crazy individual. I was getting in fights at a young age, at like, when my dad was still around. That's one of the stories my dad told me whenever, that I had already known. When we were kids, getting in fights in the, as 3-4 years old with kids, It's like I had it's like I had a light that was shining real bright, and she dimmed it, I can say that because I can look at my daughter and see the same thing, like an unbelievably just beautiful soul that's just oppressed, held down purposefully. So much, man. I went back and watched, I have 2 videos. One's called Child Abuse 101, and the other one's called Child Abuse 102. Those are the 2 videos I did on my timeline of my childhood, of just starting to get this abuse out. And I went back and watched them, and a couple things stood out. First thing that stood out was, I only had 2 or 3 views on each one, and I was like, that seemed like all of this is about my child abuse, but nobody has watched those videos. So I thought that was pretty odd. And then when I went back and watched them, the other thing I found odd was, I mean, it's just so deep. Like, there's so much, to even get into details is just more, it's just reliving. Like, I got to, like, I mean, you know how scared you are as a child when you're in that position? Like, I was stuck in a house with an adult that was obviously completely unhinged and had made me, believe that she would do anything if I did not comply, you know? I mean, the terror, the absolute terror. My son described, he put goosebumps in me. We were talking before he left, and, months ago, and he was telling me how he was so, like, when he thinks about times when his mom abused him, how scared he was. And man, just for another person to tell you they're that scared of their parent, I mean, that's just disgusting. And we do it, and it's so selfish, and we do it, and we justify it. We justify all of our abuse, and we can't even raise ourselves. We haven't even raised ourselves. I'm 43. Look at me. I'm finally figuring out how to raise myself now. And I got grown kids that are suffering because I never did, But yet, while I was their father, I had no problem telling them what to do. I had no problem telling them the right way to live, It's crazy, guys. We are walking around like blind fools, man. And it's because we're scared, because nobody healed, because this whole system does not allow you to slow down and heal. There's no time for it. There's no time for any of that. None of it's allowed. None of it's accepted. When you do it, you get the abuse that you see in the comments from my sister and brother on that video. To my mom, my sister, and all other covert narcissists, that video, it's comment section down there about abuse at 43 years old from my 30-year-old sister, maybe. She might be 30, maybe. Who was 4 years old when I left. Who, when I had my last traumatic brain injury 10 years ago and went to her house, she acted like she's going to be so kind and let me stay at her house. And it was just, from the moment I got there, it was a trauma war. I have more trauma than you. And when I would try to tell her about the trauma from my childhood, it was just, I remember her just freaking out and crying and going, "You can't talk about my mom like that. Don't you talk about my mom like that. Don't." So once she established that, and I couldn't go there anymore with and I mean, I just was bringing up like how I was grounded for years at a time, how I was told what my truth was, how I was, beat, how, and I just like broad, nothing in detail. And, yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say, and at that time she was 19 and I was in my I'd already had my business, right before I had my TBI 10 years ago, I was starting my next business, doing my own thing in construction like I'm doing now. I've had two businesses. I mean, this girl hasn't worked a day in her life except for raise fucking kids that she's traumatizing. And it just takes off from my mom. My mom's the same way. Everybody's like, my mom's such a hard working. I'm like, before I left the house, my mom had one job. I remember having one job outside the house, and it was right before I left. Are you kidding? She acted like she babysitted She babysat, but she didn't babysit. She didn't even babysit her own fucking kids. Me and my brother babysit her kids. All of them babysit shit. My mom had 2 little money makers, her 2 male children who were the oldest. Come on, get the fuck out of here. Quit playing games, guys. Quit playing games. Quit pretending. Quit living in fantasy world, man. You know? Nothing's gonna get, things just getting worse, man. Shit's getting worse out there. And, you know, if you really love and care about your family, you need to quit going outside yourself. Fix your shit. You know, take care of your family. You say you love your family. Love is an action. Love is not buying things for them. Love is not distractions. Love is not, you know, spending money. It's not love. In fact, love is letting go. You know, that's the biggest signal of love, is letting go. Not clinging tightly, guys. That version of love is such a disgusting, nasty, selfish, self-centered version of love. It's really nasty. And that's what we've been taught, that we know best, that we're just don't have a critical thought. Just as long as you go along with the group think, you know, beat your kids. They don't know how to, when they're born, they don't know how to sleep. They don't know how to eat. You have to beat them. You got to force feed them. You have to separate from them. You have to let them cry for hours and learn how to sleep on their own. I mean, oh my God, guys, and we keep on having children. Oh, Lord have mercy. We just pass this trauma down and pass this trauma down and pass this trauma down. And we justify it at every end. And we don't even care about the living, to the point where we'll have new kids to make up for the living that won't agree and go along with our neurosis, you know, our narcissistic neurosis. I mean, it's crazy. It literally is. It stunts. And I'm documenting it. I'm documenting it all. It's all right here. You don't have to wonder about anything. It's all right here, guys. I'm not hiding anything. It's all right here. Oh, man. I'm going to have to do another video. I was supposed to be talking about what I did bad. Okay.